With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
After last week soaking at Mugello, the weather's a little bit fairer here in Barcelona as the PRL rolls into town for the LMP3 GT4 Challenge. Delighted to have your company on RaceSpotTV for what should hopefully be an hour's worth of fantastic action for your Monday night dose of the PRL. Myself, Darren Thacker, up in the commentary box, joined as always by Ron Morns, and this should be a little bit of a dry one, Ron. I'm looking forward to seeing how the drivers can adapt in this 1 hour race.
Yeah, looking forward to how these drivers are going to tackle this 1 hour race around a track, which is very much so a known quantity in the racing world. You know, I think there I can speak for the both of us. When we first got into F1, this was the perennial home of F1's preseason test. You know, Barcelona, it's a classic, but despite that, it's also a classic annoyance for some drivers as well. I don't know about your experience driving around here in the sim, but it always feels like they're skating on ice around here. So even with that being said, you're going to have far more grip than we had in the rain-soaked conditions at Mugello 1 week ago, but Barcelona going to be the fourth stop of this fantastic season calendar.
Yeah, and you've brought up the F1 testing. I'd like to say that I've watched more F1 testing than I'd like people to know, really, around this circuit. I feel like I know pretty well at this point, but after this week, we go to tracks like Phillip Island, Long Beach, Mosport, tracks that, you know, aren't necessarily as well used to the circuit of Barcelona, Catalonia, as a general rule of thumb. Looking forward to seeing how drivers can adapt there, and to end the season at the Nürburgring and Road America, it's going to be a fantastic way to round out the opening season of 2025. But after 3 races, we're getting a bit of a picture now in the championships, and it's Adam Brockway leading in the LMP3 driver standings. He's not got much of a margin though. Mobin Khan is still 7 points back, and he's having a bit of an up and down season, so he can absolutely be right in the mix tonight once again. Eric Leroy's consistency sees him inside the top 3 as well. Carter James and David Stevenson find themselves in the top 5. Jacob Van Spanje and Victor Couto just outside that top 5 and tied on points as well. They'll be trying to break inside tonight. JP Alfonso, Zach Hebert and Edwin Onofre rounding out our top 10. A few of those guys looking to push forward as well tonight. In the teams, it's Maradna's M Squad Oceana Coffee who lead the way by quite a nice margin as well. Echelon Simsport LMP3 are in the fight, but a little ways back. The Ginger Livery's Maradna's team are going to be in P3 with Ignite just the 1 point shy of that 200 threshold. Satellite Racing LMP3 and Solbeck Precision Racing are 5th and 6th, with Impact Simsport, Sart XMC and Hydro Race Geodesic Racing rounding out our top 9 teams in the Teams Championship. Over in the GT4s, and I feel like it's a bit of a familiar story. It's Aiden Young leading the championship again. However, that gap of 23 points is pretty much as big as it's been for him in the last year. He's won 3 championships on the spin, but he's not really had the kind of comfort zone that he's currently having, and the 23-point gap over Arnaud Genest is going to be feeling pretty good. He'll be looking to extend that tonight, I'm sure, and that's going to be where the battles are at. Ken Copeland and Justin Rame third and fourth as they chase for P2. Justin Bragan inside the top 5 with Roman Foe. Kalen Tobin and Kurt Ham just about in the 110s. Matthew Wyckoff and Ayrton Williams rounding out our top 10, tied on 112. We'll see if they can push on. Mind you, Aaron Mize, after his DNF last week, will be trying to come back through the order. In the teams, it's Unit X Valhalla who lead the way on 250 points, with Satellite Racing, GT4 and Passion Sim Esports in second and in third. The Wrong Stuff are just over that 200 point threshold in fourth, with in the middle of the pack Racing, middle of that top 10 in P5. WSR Esports Buckicker chasing the Delta. Hungry Ounces and Sutlex MC GT4 are all over the 100 point threshold. Entropy Sim Sports hoping to find themselves there tonight. They will be starting tonight from 10th position in the standings. Before we get going and get ourselves back onto the grid for some qualifying action, we of course have to thank our sponsors who make these broadcasts possible 5 nights a week here from the PRL on RaceSpotTV, starting with Logitech G. Logitech G wheels and pedals are equipped with true force feedback to help you feel the road and own the race. Use code PRECISION5 at checkout on logitechg.com for 5% off of your purchase. Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers. Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts. From the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision5 coupon code. Buttkicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every single game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat with Buttkicker. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. It's the head of sim racing photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. It is, of course, a great addition to any sim room. And Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on all of their socials to become a better driver. And I'm sure you can follow them on pretty much any social you can think of. So make sure you get on that. Thanks again to all of our sponsors who do make these broadcasts possible, as we can get to some of the action here this evening. Not a great deal longer left in qualifying here on. Times are going to have to come in thick and fast, and this is the stage of the season where starting in a good position in the race can really give you that confidence boost throughout this race and maybe into the next few races, which is a crucial stage of the season.
Yeah, we are very much so now in the midpoint of this season. This 9-race calendar is already 3 races old, so looking at the tracks we have coming up this season, these are going to be the money races, because as much as it may not have the same punch to it as the opening races of the season, and it won't have the same pressure to it as the end of this season, really important to set a good tone throughout race number 4, 5, and 6. So here at Barcelona tonight, Phillip Island in 1 week's time, and Long Beach the week after that, going to be real important races for these drivers. And as you just said, qualifying oh so vital in this series. Just looking through how things have gone thus far this season, while the LMP3s, really none of the drivers, with the exception of Miguel Vigo, who won the race at Daytona from the pole, that hasn't really mattered too much. The pole-sitting drivers have not converted that to victories thus far this season in the LMP3s. The GT4s, on the other hand, complete opposite side of the coin. Garrett Maines and Aiden Young have the 3 victories thus far this season. Maines kicked it off at Watkins Glen, and Aiden Young off the back of back-to-back wins at Daytona and Mugello. All those drivers started from their respective poles in those races, so this qualifying session going to have a lot of bite to it. Doubly so around a track like this, where overtaking historically is a bit on the tricky side.
Of course, we will be seeing the drivers use this layout at the end of the circuit. None of that final chicane malarkey all the way through the fast.
Thank God.
Double right-hander to end the lap. Yeah, it's going to be good for the racing, and hopefully we'll get some more overtakes down to turn 1 thanks to it. Maxime Grenon looking to try and go a little bit faster than his 36.384, but we'll have to stay in P2 as that last lap wasn't quite quicker. Justin Rame looking to go a little bit quicker than his 1:42.1. It's to 1 dead, which is somewhat impressive. But it is Arnaud Jeunesse leading the way for the time being. Aiden Young having to settle for P4. Let's see if he can find himself higher than the second row of the grid. I'm sure that's where he'd like to be, but with the likes of Justin Rame just in front, I think he'd be slightly worried about starting around that P4 mark.
Yeah, you would be a little bit nervous when it comes to something like that. Being in the mid-pack of a race like this going to be gotta be a bit sketchy, especially heading off through the first sector of this lap. I mean, the amount of times in which I've seen races in real life around this track where the turn 1 and 2 chicane heading off into the long, seeming like it never ends right-hander of turn number 3, that section, it just spawns some incidents. So you want to be on one of the ends of this field. Doesn't matter whether you're at the front or the back. If you're in the midfield, you are going to, I wouldn't even say walking around on eggshells. You're going to be walking on a tightrope at the start of this race if you find yourself in the midfield. So not the ideal spot at all in both the LMP3s and the GT4s.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a few minutes, 3.5 minutes or so. It's really going to define the season, and it's going to be exciting at that. Interesting as well that Raymond Myers only split by those 11 thousandths of a second at the moment in second and third. Couldn't really get much closer than those two. Those two, again, mind you, if you're new to the series, the two most successful PRL GT4 drivers in history, and by quite some distance in that. We've had Justin Rame win 23 times, Aiden Young win 21 times. Next most is Rob Campbell on 12. So really have been the two classes of the field over the last few years here in the PRL. But Arnaud Jeunesse trying to put his name amongst the pigeons. Mobin Khan going faster. 35.469 is what the 64 can do, and he extends that lead to nearly 3/4 of a second over a field such as this. Incredible. Victor Couto brings that margin down, but Mobin Khan's looking imperious tonight already.
Gotta say, as much as Mobin Khan has yet to get a victory thus far this season, keyword being yet, because I'm gonna say this right now, he is going to back that car into victory lane at some point. That number 64 car has been brutally quick all throughout this season. Has a pole that coming out Watkins Glen, and he's been very fast in all the races that we've had thus far this season. Mugello 1 week ago really proved that case there because he was fast in the rain. He got struck by about 15 falling anvils on the process, but he proved himself to be very fast even in wet weather conditions. So Mobin Khan, definitely a driver that we have to keep tabs on, and if he can start from the pole and have a race where he keeps that tungsten umbrella above his head and prevents those anvils from leaving a dent in his head, who knows, we may end up seeing Mobin Khan finally grab that first win of the season.
Yeah, and less water in the air to almost hinder him in that prospect. So we'll have to see if he can do so tonight. If he was to get the pole tonight, it would be a 6th pole in 13 races. Problem is for him, he's only had 1 win in that period, so looking to try and double up in that front, but he has just been such a fantastic driver in qualifying. It's just been a little bit difficult for him to try and convert that into a race win, but at a track like Barcelona, I think he'd back himself to get over the line. Garrett Mains, race winner from the opening round at Watkins Glen in the GT4 class, back in the number 12 and back inside the top 5 for the time being. He's trying to get to the top 4, but I don't think we can get much closer than the top 4 right now, Ron. Arnaud Jeunesse, Aiden Young, Aaron Myers, Justin Rame, less than 0.04 of a second, and just between Young and Rame, second to fourth, is 4 thousandths. It's incredibly tight.
I was just going to say that when you were talking about close to the top 4, where I was like, look at Aiden Young to Justin Rame. That is practically nothing. I mean, around a racetrack like this, Barcelona, not the longest track in the world, but still 2.94 miles, to have that little time between 3 cars in a series as competitive as this, that is absolutely ridiculous. That could be a matter of like just going a couple of inches farther into the apex around any of the corners around this track. Think of, you could run like a millimeter wide heading through, you could run a millimeter wide off the apex through turn number 3, and that could make up a big difference. So let's see if Aiden Young will be able to dispatch of Jeunesse and move up to the pole. I don't believe he will improve. So remaining in second is Aiden Young, who's been the dominant driver thus far this season, already has 2 wins on the board, looking to try and grab his 3rd tonight. But if our theory is to be remaining true, it'll be Jeunesse, I should say, grabbing the win.
Yeah, let's see if that holds up. I think it's going to be quite a fight at the front of the GT4 battle with Arnaud Jeunesse maybe leading the charge for the opening couple of minutes, but how long will he stay there? That is for us to find out over the next hour. Here is the pole up, though, from Oben Khan. The 64 will get himself around here at the circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia in a pretty fancy time. Of course, last time we were here was the back end, well, actually it was midway through last year in the LMP3 and GT4 challenge, and it was in the end the pole sitter at this circuit was Dayton Lowe, and that was a time of a 1:36.004. This lap time I think just a little bit off that, but not a great deal, showing how consistent the lap times that we get here in the PRL are. Actually, in fact, I'm wrong. It's the 35.4. What am I talking about? Fastest LMP3 lap we've seen here Ron.
Well, it's a record-setting lap from Oben Khan, and let's ride on board with him as he's heading through the mid-sector of this lap. Coming out a couple of moments ago, if I can pull up the track map, true professionalism from here right now, heading into turn number 7 and 8 in the mid-sector of this track. That section for me has always been a real pain in the butt. It's also a section where on lap 1, you think of, okay, yeah, the first few corners obviously going to be tough, but that 7 and 8 complex also going to be really tricky for these drivers as well. Here's a premier overtaking opportunity. As turn number 10, one of the heaviest braking zones around this lap. But again, this alternative configuration that we're running here at Barcelona, not as heavy of a braking zone as you would with the tighter version, which was used by Formula One up until a couple of years ago. But I'm very happy, as I said, and chimed in earlier on in this broadcast, the fact we're running on the historic layout. I can't even say it's a historic layout anymore. It's just the right layout. F1 is now officially going back to using it. Turn number 12 and 13, skipping out on that absolutely hideous final chicane. But that was the lap from Oben Khan to grab his second pole position of the season. And let's see the lap from Arnaud Jeunesse to grab his first.
Yeah, for Arnaud, this is another record-setting lap for himself. Fastest lap in the GT4s and the PRL that we've seen here. Mind you, we've only raced here once on this layout, mind you, on the Monday night, and that was on the same day that we saw the LMP3s. But that night, the pole time was set by Aiden Young with 1:49.007. This pole lap from Arnaud Jeunesse is a 1:48.914. In fact, the pole time last time out in July would only be good enough for P5 in this race. It's how high quality it has been tonight. Aiden Young betted on his lap time from qualifying from about 6 months ago. It's just not going to be enough though, and Jeunesse is proving why. With a very tight lap, great through the opening sector, keeping it nice and tight to some of these apexes. I think this is the trickiest part of the circuit, down at turns 7, 8, and 9. Just trying to keep the car in touch. Don't let it drift out too far wide into the gravel, into that sausage curve, and then pin it as much as you dare through turn 9 as you rise over the crest. Once you're through that, now you're only really thinking about another couple of braking zones, and then you're going to be home and dry.
And gotta be home and dry, and considering we don't have the weather to deal with, unlike last time out at Mugello, these drivers very happy the fact they're going to leave this race with not having to worry about getting some rainwater out of their ears when everything is said and done, but heading through the really twisty final sector of this lap. Turn number 11 out through turn number 12, and the final turn of turn number 13. Look at that from Jeunesse, splitting the difference and going either side of that sausage curb on exit. That's the way to do it there. I mean, your exhaust probably won't like you, but still, if it works, it works, and it worked out very well for him to grab the pole. Another record-setting time, 2 record-setting pole times here, and let's see if it's going to set the trend for an overall record-setting night of racing action here from the PRL. It's been a brilliant season up to this point, Dara. We've had 3 different winners in the LMP3 category. I say 3 different pole sitters in the LMP3 category leading up to today. 2 different winners in the LMP3 class. Really need to get my notes in a line there. My apologies for that. But Adam Brockway and Miguel Vigo have been our winners thus far in LMP3. But I have a feeling there, and I think my slip of the tongue may have called my shot, but I think we may have a third today. What about you?
I don't know. It's difficult to call this race because it's definitely going to be a competitive one. That's for sure. I mean, particularly that GT4 battle with the top 4 by barely anything. That's going to be quite competitive. In the LMP3s, Adam Brockway, yeah, doing well off the start. Let's see if he can try and move forward, because he's going to have to move forward. A few cars in front of him. Here is the grid, mind you, for the race here this evening. An hour's worth here at Barcelona. Momin Khan will lead us to green once again. 6th time in 13 races in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge. Can he make it into his 2nd win in that period? Victor Couto will be alongside him. The Floridian will be on the front row, just ahead of Eric Leroy and Maxime Grenon, who make up row number 2. Adam Brockway and David Stevenson are on row 3. All of these guys within a second of the pole time and in somewhat of a championship contention. Jerome Bertiome and Carter James 7th and 8th, with Edwin Onofra and Zach Hebert running out the top 10. But Pineda and Faizan Sheikh 11th and 12th as they lead Chad Nobles, Chris Massey, Isaac Gardner and Dakiel Rodriguez, those drivers making up rows 7 and 8. Row 9 is going to be Kwok Yin and Steve Bammer, the driver from Illinois in the 76, will be in P18 for the LMP3s. For the GT4s, it'll be Arnaud Jeunesse in somewhat of a championship contention. P2, he's not necessarily been right at the sharp in every single race, but consistency is getting him there, and a pole here is going to get him that 1 point closer to championship. With Aiden Young, who he lines up alongside, with only 33 thousandths between the front row. 37 thousandths between the top 4, with Aaron Myers and Justin Ray making up row number 2. Garrett Maines, race winner in race 1, will start P5, and Christian Menzes in 6th. Ken Copeland and Roman Foe on row 4, with Matthew Wyckoff and Ayrton Williams. Kate Smith, then Michael Brooks making up rows 5 and 6. We've got Andrew Slovak, Eric Fenson and Chris Schmrecker inside our top 15, with Gabriel Gutierrez alongside the 10 on row 8. Jeremy Rogers and Joseph Maley make up row number 9, with more drivers to come. Kurt Ham and Jeremy Manello inside the top 20. Schwinkler, Tobin, Powell and Gallant on rows 11 and 12, with Roy Brown, Parker Muirhead, Travis Pruitt, Joe Farroni, Jeff Rosenberger and Stephen Tang inside the top 30 here at Barcelona. 48 cars here this evening, Ron. It's going to be a busy one.
Oh, that it absolutely will be, and it feels like the appropriate time to mention this. The lap traffic and the lap traffic dilemma that these drivers will have to deal with, from the drop of the green flag all the way to the fall of the checkered. But we got this start to talk about. You got to clear the first hurdle, and let's see who will.
Yeah, rounding the final corner then. It's round 4 of the LMP3 GT4 series here in 2025. Momin Khan trying to lead us to green once again. It's a very busy LMP3 field, but Khan gets us away. And what a start that is from the number 64 driver. He's been able to get himself a good 3-4 tenths as they make their way down towards turn number 1. That's a massive margin on a start like this. You can see in the GT4s, it's not quite the same for Arnaud Jeunesse as they make their way towards turn number 1. They're 3 wide in the LMP3s.
Oh!
There's a spin right at the front of the field. We'll get to that in a bit, as I think that's one of the drivers bouncing over the sausage curb. 4 wide into turn 1 at the front of the GT4s. Drivers all over the road. Around goes Justin Rame. 23 race wins. He's got a long way to go to get his 24th, and he's going to have to come from right at the back of the field, as there's big contact at the front of the GT4 field, I should say. Battles galore, and this looks like it's going to be an incredibly important opening lap for the entire race.
Yeah, incredibly important for the entirety of this season as well. You know, with this championship, there's only 9 races on the calendar, so every single race means just that extra more compared to some other series that may run for 10, 11, or even 12 races. So these drivers looking to make hay while the sun is shining, strike while the iron's hot. Whatever saying you want to use to describe these drivers, they want to get the job done and make up as many points as they possibly can to wrap the bow around the storyline with that incident we saw hang off into turn number 1 in the LMP3 category. It was actually Victor Coito coming up blows with, I believe, David Stevenson. So those 2 cars being the ones that went off the track, Stevenson being the one that spun around, and Coito being the one that nearly sent himself up into low Earth orbit with that trip over the barrier, trip over the curbs, heading through the runoff area of turn number 1 and 2. But as you can see, finally completing lap 1 as we take a look at that replay.
Yeah, a bit of a crazy start right at the front of the field. A couple of drivers caught up in that, including Dave Stevenson, as you mentioned, Isaac Gardner, Keith Powell as well. I think I did see one other driver down there, but I may have been... no, wait, it wasn't Keith Powell, sorry, it was Faizan Sheikh down there in the LMP3. Powell is just a GT4. But that is the kind of instance that we saw. Justin Rame, I mean, just becoming a victim to the fact that there were 3 cars side by side behind him. There was nothing that really he could do, nothing that many others could do. It's just, the nature of the corner. I mean, pick the bones out of that one, Ron.
I mean, I think you nailed it right on the head there, Dara, talking about the way that section of the track is designed. It feels like a bottleneck when you go on that start-finish straightaway and head your way off into turn number 1 and 2. You've also got those curbs on the outside, the sausage curbs, which I just absolutely hate. The fact that those are allowed on a racetrack nowadays when they're essentially a race car ramp will always stun me, and but I don't really know why they're still around. But that creates even more trouble heading off to the corner when you've got those sausage curbs that loom in these drivers' minds. As much as running over them in the sim may not result in as much back pain as it does in real life, hitting those is still not going to be a fun day. Those sausage curbs, even on iRacing, are not your friend. But that just makes for a really foul concoction of things heading off through turn number 1 and 2. Most of the field making it through about as clean as they could, but with the way that corner is, and also some cars still stopped and spinning in the LMP3s, it just created a really unfortunate series of events for a decent chunk of the GT4 field.
Yeah, really, it's going to congest up a little bit at the front of, well, in the mid-pack of the GT4s at least. I was going to say at the front, but if you are scratching your eyes and thinking, am I, living in about 3 weeks ago? No, you're not. Aiden Young is leading Garrett Mains, as he did in the early stages back at Watkins Glen in the season opener. The difference this time is Young was always ahead. Garrett Mains is the chaser, really, and he's losing a little bit of time as they work their way across the end of their second lap tonight. Jerome Bertiome, great to get a camera on some of these drivers, working his way out the order, actually. Up 3 positions to start with, started in 7th, now up to 4th, and right behind Adam Brockway as well. Been a good start for the 217. Let's see if he can keep this one up.
Oh, it has been an absolutely fabulous start, but I'm going to hold off on any further comment so I don't jinx the driver of the 217 car. As you can see, Adam Brockway dipping a wheel off into the dirt coming out of turn number 9. Now, turn 9 around this track, that is going to be the source of slowdown hell for these drivers. I think there's no doubt about it. Side by side with Edwin Onofre and Victor Coito heading through turn number 9. It looks like Coito going to get that move done to slip his way up another spot. Coito, the fact that car is still going in a straight line considering how big of a whack he had with those sausage curbs on the outside turn number 1 on the inside of 2 at the very start of this race will continue to stun me. And speaking of stunning, look at that stunning side-by-side racing in the GT4s.
That's Garrett Mains defending for all his life on Arnaud Jeunesse. Here's Christian Menez as he comes through towards turn number 10. The 55 looking for the outside line as Jeunesse will go to the inside of the opening round race winner. Nothing happening there for the number 3-1-2 on the number 1-2 as they continue on through the final sector. But Aaron Myers at the back of this train as well. He'll be sniffing around. He needs all the points he can get in relation to Aiden Young and the championship picture. Of course, when drop rounds are applied, he should come into it a little bit more without Aiden Young having to drop some points, but even so, Aaron Myers will not be in real contention as he was throughout last season just yet. Needs another couple of headline results, and that could start this evening. A few minutes gone in this race. We will be able to get a clock for you shortly, but only a couple of laps have gone. We've still got about 53 minutes left in this race, so more than enough time for these drivers to be scrapping it out all the way through. Of course, pit stops to think of as well, Ron. I think some of these drivers are going to be thinking about them in a little while. Put that on the back burner and really focus on the moves in front of them for the time being.
I have a feeling of all of the races that we have this season, with maybe the exception of Long Beach, which that is going to be a test of these drivers' mental ability if ever you see one. But Barcelona, nothing to scoff at either. I have a feeling that these drivers are thinking about just keeping the car on the track. They're not really thinking about the strategy. So of all the races for these racers to have those set boundaries in terms of when to pit, what to do at certain points of the race, it's probably going to be a race like this. It is tricky enough just to keep the car on a straight line and go side by side with your competitors without ending up in a gravel trap or a barrier or just going your way through the grass. So I think this race here at Barcelona is going to be one where these drivers are maybe a bit less experimental when it comes to that strategy.
Yeah, we've seen it a few times how drivers can be a little bit experimental, but more of the same tonight. Generally, drivers not trying anything too tricky. We have seen Mobin Khan come into the pit lane a little bit earlier than others around him over the course of last season, coming into this season as well. We'll see if he does something similar again tonight. Leading the race, though, he has the prerogative on when to go. You may think he'll look around him and decide when to pit accordingly, but we've still got a long way to go before we start thinking about that. Half an hour or so, I think, before most of the teams, most of the drivers make their way down pit road to their teams and to their boxes, but for the time being, they are going to be fighting it out. Here's Joe Faroni in the number 38, getting it all out of shape into turn 11, and he's going to be, he's nearly finding the one of the dirt rally motocross circuits there. Not exactly the racing line.
Yeah, certainly not. If it was running on the VW Beetle here on the iRacing platform, that would have been a good fit. Otherwise, that is not going to be a good fit at all. I think that section of the rallycross layout is a rather uncomfortable ride for these LMP3 cars. Very similar to what Victor Coito had earlier on. Very similar to what Victor Coito just had a couple of moments ago coming out of the final corner. The gravel. That's going to be a big thing we have to talk about in this race as well with those gravel traps. We may end up having certain parts of this track that resemble rally special stage, but never mind that. Side-by-side racing, heading through turns number 1 and 2. Victor Coito, the wheelman, trying to get past Zach Hebert in that 511 car. Not close enough to get the move done, but Victor Coito giving it the old college try. And a corner exit, he's got to come back at him now into turn number 4. Will he be able to get the move done? Yes, he does.
Yeah, big wiggle it was from Zach Hebert coming through turn 2, unsettling the rear end and realistically losing him a bit of pace, allowing Victor Coito to slip up the inside. Evan Onofre looking to come through as well. I'm sure he wouldn't mind a move to get himself up into the top 7, but this little trio running quite nicely, just about 10 seconds off of the race lead of Mobin Khan. GT4 traffic, a couple of GT4 cars in front. They've not really hit the main pack yet, though, and we'll have to wait to see that. Joseph Maley has gone around in the 999, and that's an awful place to be stuck on the inside of turn number 5. What's happened to Steve Bammer? Rear end's got around at turn 1, and I thought he held it generally there, but nearly a full spin, and he'll recover that one. But early stages, maybe some early nerves from some of these drivers, just getting used to the fuel loads in the car, but for the time being, we've not seen too much drama, and I don't mind it staying that way, Ron.
Yeah, it has been a complete 9-day difference from Mugello 1 week ago, where genuinely going from one battle to another and go from one driver going off the track after battling hard to another, I felt like I was getting some whiplash as a result of all that. But here, a bit more calm. Keyword, it's still pretty nuts. You can see the GT4 LMP3, the lap traffic convergence, already playing a role in this race. We're not terribly far into it. Looking at it at the present moment, we've only got about 9 minutes on the clock of this 1 hour long race, but nevertheless, that lap traffic has already began to rear its ugly head. And at this point in time where these LMP3 drivers start to get a bit more nervous.
It's not the easiest stage of the race. We have still got 49.5 minutes left on the clock, and definitely going to be some drivers who are feeling a little bit nervous about how their races are going. Of course, you don't want to throw it away now. You've been running around, particularly in this train, at the front for the first 10 minutes, and we're in a really good position to try and score some really important big points tonight. Cannot afford a big mistake, and really, for a championship that's only 9 rounds long, you have to be there or thereabouts every single week if you're going to be trying to make that championship charge towards the end of the season, and that's exactly what these drivers are doing now. If you're Christian Menezes right at the back of this train, the number 55 driver, not really in championship contention, I think he will be just trying to pick his way through and will maybe be able to fight through with a little more impunity than the rest, meaning that the likes of Myers, Mays and Jeunesse may have to be careful that, you know, he may be less conservative with moves because he's got less to lose generally, and you do get that sometimes.
Oh yeah, the amount of times I've covered a race where a driver just genuinely feels like they have nothing to lose and they go for some rather gutsy moves, shall we say. If I had $1 for every single time that happened, I'd probably be able to afford some of the damage I was inflicted on some race cars as a result of it. But these drivers, at this point in time, they're going to try and go for the moves, and I think we may end up seeing one here in the LMP3s with lap traffic involved splitting the difference. Holy cow, Victor Coito was briefly back up to 6th. However, However, he's got a lot of trouble with Carter James on his inside, going 3 wide with the GT4 car, heading through turn number 4. That's going to cost Koito that spot for now, but side by side into the following left-handed hairpin at turn number 5. These racers still got to be side by side on corner exit. Victor Koito has been the center of attention thus far, and for understandable reason, finally muscles his way back past Carter James to slip his way up into 6th. But Koito, holy cow, he has been a really exciting driver to follow thus far.
Yeah, he has been right in the thick of it, hasn't he? All race long, as this is looking a little bit tense down in towards turn number 10, just in rain part of this train as we make our way through the long left hand. Careful, Carter James looking at Victor Koito, trying to pick his way through. Zach, keep it on the inside. Carter James going wide off the road, and he'll be sliding out. He'll be losing the position to, I believe that's Maxime Grandon, who goes down the inside of the penultimate corner. Oh, be careful through there. It's difficult to really avoid drivers who are just trying to make moves, and that'll be, I don't think that'll be looked at too kindly.
Oh,
just
more contact.
Well,
who
was coming around at the start. Left is looking bad. It's going from bad to worse, Rob.
Oh yeah, more contact being made. I was terrified seeing that GT4 car reverse their way back onto the track. I think you'd hear my genuine panic in my voice seeing that go on. 3 cars, though, absolutely wrecked as a result of all that. We're going to have to take a look at several replays of that drama, because that was a multifaceted incident with multiple stuff going on. An LMP3 car booting a GT4 out of the way, a GT4 then running into another GT4, and then more GT4s piling into that incident. That right there, it's a product of the corner that is. Turn number 13, lucky number, turn 13 around this track. Not being one of these drivers' favorites, and for very good reason. It was messy, but again, we were expecting some drama like that with multi-class racing. We got that put on full display a few moments ago.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the drivers will be pleased to have avoided that. Not just in Rainbow, that rear left you can see not looking as it should, and in the background more heavy contact again. I don't think that'll necessarily be looked at too kindly. Oh my word, that's Keith Powell. Looked at too kindly by the stewards with the hit that the LMP3 gave to GT4, but that'll be talked about post-race by the stewards, I am sure. Meanwhile, Arnaud Genest is trying to hang on from Garrett Maines as the LMP3s try and work their way through. These guys have lost 7 seconds to Aiden Young in the opening quarter of an hour in this race, but this is comfortable. The LMP3 traffic, I should say, is aggressive, and in the higher speed corners they're a lot faster, and they're showing it at the moment, aren't they?
And that they absolutely are. The thing is, when it comes to a racetrack like this and that interclass mingling, is it really puts on full display the differences between the LMP3s and the GT4s, because you've got these long corners like turn number 3, for instance. You've got the fast corners, the fast kinks like turn number 9, for instance, and you've got the slow speed ones like turns number 1, 2, 5, 7, 10, kind of, turn number 11 for sure. You got a whole bunch of everything around a racetrack like this, so you get to see those differences between the GT4s and the LMP3s compared to the rain-soaked race at Mugello that we had 1 week ago, where the difference in pace between the GT4s and the LMP3s, it was definitely still obvious, but it was a bit more negligible than we have seen in the past. Meanwhile, here at Barcelona, looking through at some of the qualifying times we had earlier on, Dekiel Rodriguez was the slowest qualifier.
Sorry, Ron. There's been that big crash at turn 9, so I know you're probably looking elsewhere. Garrett Maines off the road, bouncing over the curb. As you could see, cars all over the circuit. So Garrett Maines has dropped down the order. I didn't actually see who that was with. I think it was with, was it with Arnaud Genest? No, it was Aaron Myers, mind you. It was Aaron Myers going around with him at turn 9. Big collision. That'll drop those two well outside of the top 6. But I think side by side going into turn 9, it doesn't work out very well. And we've seen it there. I think we're probably likely to see a replay of that, but sorry to interrupt you, Ron, but that's quite a big moment, and here it is. Oh, it's the LMP3 coming across the road. Oh, that's a horrible moment, isn't it?
Oh, that is absolutely terrifying for those drivers stopped on the track, seeing that traffic come by them, and it is absolutely horrendous. So look at that. More collisions being made. That's Gabriel Gutierrez in the 424 car. Look at that, Nobles. That was an odd-looking collision. That was bizarre. It looked like a giant just grabbed that number 67 prototype car and spun it around like a top. That was really strange looking. Don't worry about interrupting me there. I was actually looking at iRacing as that was going on. So perfectly all right with that big drama hang through turn number 9. And for all of the corners to have an incident take place, turn number 9, definitely high up there in terms of the worst.
Yeah, high speed, difficult to really see, and also blind past the apex. It's difficult to really spot if there's an incident going on just up the road and arriving on the scene a little bit too quickly to stop. So definitely lucky that more drivers weren't involved in that, but with Aaron Myers kind of getting involved, and with Garrett Maines absolutely getting involved, it means that the likes of Matthew Wyckoff and Kate Smith find themselves in the top 6 now, and they'll try and push on towards the top 3, I am sure. Mobin Khan going ever faster at the front of the LMP3 field. 10.4 seconds he's got as an advantage in his back pocket, and he's building up a nice margin that even if something does go wrong, he may still even be able to be in the lead after it.
Yeah, there's still a lot of time left for this race to shake out in a completely different manner than it has already, with coming up to 19 minutes already into this race. And a lot of drama, a lot of incidents, and some drivers coming to blows trying to get some moves done. And I think as this race has settled down a little bit, I will touch back on the point that I was going to raise as we saw that drama hang through turn number 9. So hopefully this doesn't spawn yet another collision as I'm looking away from my single monitor here. Probably not a good thing that as a commentator I've only got one screen to take a look at, but nevertheless, the point that I was going to raise is there's only about 10 seconds difference between the fastest GT4 qualifier and the slowest LMP3, which around a racetrack like this, that difference is rather shocking. And you compare it in terms of the pole times in both the classes, it's closer to about 14 or 15, and considering there's only about a minute and a half in terms of the lap times, that is a staggering difference between the LMP3s and the GT4s.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting conundrum for some of these drivers. But in between the LMP3s and the GT4s, I think we're going to be seeing quite a lot of action. I think it'll settle down in terms of the lapping over the next 20 minutes or so, with drivers almost being able to gauge a little bit better how the other cars are going to be acting around some of the, particularly the higher speed corners. So we may avoid some of the collisions like we saw just here at the final corner not too long ago. I've said that there's some dust up in front, but I think it's just a driver going wide at the final corner. Very easy to do. You're running the limit, aren't you, around that part of the racetrack, and if you're in a battle, you're going to be running as close to the limit and past it, really, just trying to get that extra hundredths and thousandths.
And that's one thing when it comes to these race cars, just drawing my experience of the LMP3s, there is I wouldn't even say razor thin, it is a molecularly thin margin for error that you've got in this race car. From my personal experience as well, the LMP3 tends a bit more towards understeer, so these drivers are probably gearing them a little bit more for oversteer, heading through corners, which if you get a little bit wrong, if you end up in the marbles, if you end up in dust, or even if you just lose control, that's going to end in one way, and that is really, really badly. So in a race like this, these drivers pushing their cars to the edge of adhesion, the edge of control, and the brink of absolute disaster. And the drivers who rise to an occasion and become the ones who end up winning these races and doing well in their respective classes are the ones who are the most comfortable with being incredibly uncomfortable for over an hour.
Yeah, and I don't think I could be that comfortable for very long at all in this series. It'd probably be a rolling roadblock, to be fair, much like you'd see on the highway. But thankfully, I'm up here, nice and safe in the commentary box, not having to deal with any of the frantic action on the circuit. Quite frankly, I'm not up to it. Some of these drivers very much are, and they're going to be going side by side, it seems, through turn 7. Again, not something I'd want to be doing, but I think just about making the move to the inside. It's Aaron Myers on Romain Faux trying to reclaim some of the positions that he lost a few laps ago. And the 22 back up into P7 can try and chase after Cade Smith. You can just see in that red and blue car right in the foreground a little bit of a gap to him. But I think he'd back himself to get there. He's been up and down the field a little bit so far this season, but a very, very fast driver. We all know how good his pace is, and he'll be looking to get himself back into contention and back onto that into that top 6.
And let's see if he will be able to get that done between now and the checkered flag. Looking at the pack, though, in the GT4 class, I will say, considering how hectic this race has been thus far, and the fact these GT4 runners are still having to deal with that LMP3 traffic, which, if you're behind the wheel of a GT4 car and seeing an LMP3 car basically looks like a missile coming up right behind you, it is terrifying. So the fact that we're this far into the race, we've still got this field as vacuum sealed together as it is, really speaks volumes about the competitiveness of the PRL and how quick these drivers are. Looking at some side-by-side racing, though, heading through turn number 1, it's a McLaren on McLaren fight. Eric Fenton involved in that action, heading through the first chicane. Look at Robert Schwankler, I believe, and the 235 car guy got involved in this action as well. We got 3 McLarens and 1 Mercedes converging onto each other, with some more LMP3 cars hoving into view behind side by side, still heading off into turn number 5. It looks like they finally single file out, but the GT4s proving themselves to be able to battle tooth and nail around a racetrack like this, which is a rare honor bestowed on very few other kinds of race cars.
Yeah, definitely so. Tricky to really be effective with your moves around a circuit like this, but being able to have a cutting edge is going to be crucial. And that's kind of what we're seeing from a couple of drivers, not least from Aaron Myers, as we saw just a couple of moments ago. Still 36 minutes left in this race, more than enough time for battles to still develop here. But we are seeing, a couple of drivers run away in the leads of their respective classes. Mebane Khan with a 12-second advantage, Aiden Young with a 9-second advantage. And mind you, for Aiden Young, of course, he's hoping to go 1 away from the all-time record wins in the GT4s. Currently on 21 is Aiden Young. The record is 23, but held by Justin Rain. But he's getting ever closer, and he's hoping to get himself to the sharp end and right to the precipice by the end of tonight. For Mebane Khan, not too many wins for him. He's only got the 1 to his name. Wouldn't mind a second. But he's been a driver that's been there or thereabouts for so long. And been so fast. He's had 9 top 5 finishes. I mean, he's higher on the top 5 list than he's on the win list, which is almost surprising considering how many times he's been in the lead of a race, but hoping to get it done tonight, going exactly the right way about it for the time being.
And as the side-by-side racing continues in this I nearly said LMP3, in this GT4 pack, these will be some very funky-looking LMP3 race cars. But I will spin a little bit of a yarn from the world of American motorsports once this side-by-side battling cools off, heading into turn number 4. We nearly just saw 3 drivers go off the track in a cloud of dust and steam, but they get through surprisingly smoothly, despite how much they were shuffling around. Still side-by-side racing. Feel like I can barely get a point across as these drivers go battling side by side, battling tooth and nail through every single corner around this racetrack. But I will bring up the case of a very well-known NASCAR driver by the name of Mark Martin, who is always considered to be a gentleman in the racing world, and he was the perennial runner-up. At the end of the day, I think he finished runner-up in the NASCAR Cup Series Championship like 5 times, I believe it was. Finished runner-up way more often than he ever took the checkered flag. Sometimes in the world of racing, it hurts to be nice. Nice guys don't finish last, but they do finish second disturbingly often. But still, some of these drivers may be breaking their elbows at the urge to win, and the desire to go for all-out glory can sometimes overtake that ability to want to make friends. So at this point in time, these drivers are maybe seeing the fact that we're coming up to the halfway mark of this season. In fact, I believe, trying to do the quick math in my head, I think now that we are quickly approaching the halfway mark of this 4th round of the championship, we are nearly at the halfway mark of this season, Dara. So the fact we're about to get the second half underway, these drivers may decide that it's time to go for some dives.
Yeah, this point in the race in 1 week's time will be the halfway point of the season. Will be ending just about in the first week of March across this series. Of course, we will be seeing the first champion officially crowned in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge. Of course, the IndyCar Series opened the season for 2025, but with the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks' time, there will be a 1 week break in that championship. And so the first championship finale of the season will be on the 4th of March on a Monday night at Road America. So definitely all to play for, and I think a few drivers in this series and will be keeping a very keen eye on what goes on in this series with the first champions crowned, and the teams as well will be keeping a close eye, with some of these teams of course having teams in not just the Monday night action but the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and even the Sunday as well. So definitely all to play for those guys as Grenon goes up the inside and the Canadian driver tries to find a line. Not going to work out at turn 10, but clearly some desire from the number 27, and who's to argue with him? He's only a couple of seconds off P2 here.
Yeah, that's practically nothing between those drivers, and let's see how these battles are going to continue to flare up. And Young, though, back at the front in the GT4 category, and maybe going to break that streak of GT4 pole sitters converting that pole position straight into a victory, but who knows? I've seen stranger things, to be sure. But look at that, a line of LMP3 race cars still negotiating with this traffic and contact being made, heading down into the corner. Zach Hebert giving a little bit of a hip check, heading through the braking zone into turn number 1. I'm going to look to try and see who that car was that he gave that love tap to, but that was not ideal at all for Zach Hebert, and I'm curious as to whether or not there's any damage on that race car as a result of all that, because it wasn't a big thunk to the side of that GT4 McLaren. However, that's not going to be a good whack either. It was Romain Faux that he booted out of the way there, and that may have given him a little bit of damage possibly.
Yeah, I think for Zach Hebert, he's almost been skirting around some of the big collisions that we've seen so far this evening, but getting himself involved in a little bit of argy-bargy there in his battle for in P5 of the LMP3 category. Berthiaume and Brockway not too far in front either. You can see them in the foreground as we work our way down in towards turn 10 once again. Eric Leroy leading the train as well. So don't count that battle out. 15.5 seconds, so they are back to Mobin Khan in the lead of the race. It is incredible when you think about that gap between the top two being 16 seconds and then the gap between the next 5 being just shy of 2.5. I mean, it is incredible to have that juxtaposition right at the front of the field. Nearly halfway through the race though, and with every passing lap it feels more and more like Mobin Khan has control in this race. The issue is he's got to make sure he gets through the traffic every single lap. He can't quite relax around a circuit like this.
Another thing as well, he needs to focus on those pit stops, because if we harken our minds back to the second race of the season at Daytona, Mobin Khan was in a rather good spot to do well in that race, but as a result of a faulty run through the pits, it did not come up Mobin Khan's way. But you know, here at Barcelona, he's learned his lesson thus far this season, and he's proved himself that, hey, he's fast this season. There is no doubt about that. Mobin Khan is a very quick driver in this PRL GT4 and LMP3 season here to kick off 2025. So Mobin Khan, maybe with that realization, is like, hey, I can take a little bit easy. I don't need to go for all-out glory and set qualifying lap after qualifying lap after qualifying lap. So Mobin Khan, this point in time, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he can put together at some point this season, because he's just proved himself to be a very fast driver, and I feel like it would be rather disappointing if we didn't see him back that number 64 car into victory lane at some point this season.
Yeah, it's again not the longest season as well though, so definitely something that he's going to have to try and get a move on to do in the final 6 rounds, including this left of season 1 in 2025. With the first season of 2025 being being the fourth, but Aiden Young. You know what, Ron? I'm going to start that sentence again and try and get my thoughts in order. Aiden Young has gone 3 seasons in a row winning the championship. If he goes the 4th, it'll be a full year. There we go. It'll be a full year's worth of championships in this LMP3 GT4 challenge, and that is what he is hoping to do over the next month or so. Little bit of a moment for Jerome Berthiaume on the back of GT4, but they just about rate their way through. Victor Couto all over the rear end of that 217 though, and as they make their way down towards turn 4, Berthiaume feels the need to defend the inside line, and the ever-experienced head knows exactly how to defend. The issue is Victor Couto is trying every single line to try and attack. Inside line again for turn 5 will be Couto's, and the 72 slips up the inside, slips into P4, and they allow Grenon to follow him through.
Yeah, and let's see if the side-by-side fight is going to continue heading down into the corner. I gotta say, Maxime Grenon, incredibly impressive for the last round of the championship at Mugello. Grabbed the pole position, did not get the victory when everything was said and done, but he was fast as you see a GT4 car go off the track and rejoin it heading through turn number 9. But Maxime Grenon has been very fast in his 2 appearances thus far this season. Incredibly impressive is a driver of the number 27 car, and let's see if he can bring a little bit of smoke into this battle for the final spot on the podium in LMP3.
Yeah, Grenon, a driver who did a decent job when he was able to be here last season. 3 top 5s in the 5 races he attended, and the other 2 races he wasn't far off, and actually all of those 3 top 5s came in the last 4 races of the season, so definitely a bit of momentum that he carried through from the back end of 2024 as Jerome Berthiaume makes his way down pit lane. We promise you he's there. There he is in his sim rig. You can have a little bit of a rest of the eyes, maybe just have a bit of a deep breath as he might think about strumming that guitar, which is, I presume, a guitar behind him, but he'll get stopped in his marks, and it's the fine margins in pit stops like this, Ron, that can really change a race around. If you go a little bit too far over, having to reverse back could cost you a couple of seconds, and in a battle as close as that front train is, you can't really afford mistakes like that at all.
And we have seen that rear its ugly head throughout this season, haven't we, Dara? Some drivers running an expert race, a flawless race, if you would, except for just slightly overshooting their marks. Come time for that one and only pit stop in this race. Those pit stops, oh so vital in a series like this. You think, okay, 60 minutes, you have plenty of time to try and get it done. But if you have a slow pit stop, something like that can really derail your chances of doing well in a race. The amount of times that I've covered a race where a driver was doing fantastic, they were doing great, they were in a good mood, they had a right vibe going about them in the race, then come time for the pits, something goes wrong and it completely messes up the entire trajectory of the way they were thinking their race would go. Those pit stops, it may not seem like much, but even if you have a massive gap like Mobin Khan had, I should say, as he's now making that call to come down to the pits, those pit stops really vital. But Mobin Khan from the race lead making that call to come down pit lane.
Yeah, and let's see how it's going to work out now for Khan as he will get it stopped on the marks and will get it out once again. He's stopped and he will be sitting and waiting for his time to leave pit road. 25 minutes left in this race. I think a decent time to make a pit stop as just as we see some of the drivers behind pull into the box, Mobin Khan rolls out and he will find himself leaving the pit lane quite comfortably in P6. Nice spot to be in. 8 seconds behind Kwok Yin, who of course started on the back row of the LMP3 grid. We'll see what Mobin can do to try and make inroads and keep himself in the lead of that LMP3 class. Other 2 rolling off pit lane, and Couto will beat Grenon out as I think we would have expected, but maybe with a bit of a larger gap than what they entered the pit lane with.
And maybe able to grow that gap as a result of a run through the pit. Certainly won't be the first time we've seen that this season. Certainly would not be the last. But with about 24 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock, there's going to be a fun one all the way up until the checker flag. We got battles to talk about up and down the grid. Mobin Khan still going to be my main pick in that LMP3 class because he's been fast all season long. He's shown pace, but you don't want to have close calls like that coming out of turn number 8.
No, I talked about turn number 8 being a very difficult and quite scary part of the circuit, and we're seeing exactly why. Khan nearly coming to blows there in a way that we've seen a couple of times. We saw it at the opening round. At Watkins Glen was leading the race, came together with an LMP3, with a GT4 in his LMP3 and suffered the consequences because of it. Thankfully, none of the same, at least just yet, with 24 minutes still on the clock, but he will be trying to get his way home and dry in the final 10-15 laps of this race. We've got Eric Leroy, though, leading the race now ahead of Adam Brockway, with these two yet to pit. Leroy's been a really consistent driver so far this season, not really being right at the front of the field as there was a driver off the road there, not really being right at the front of the field in terms of fighting for the race win, but just picking up some really consistent results means that he's in contention, and rightly so.
And that's the thing when it comes to a series like this. You don't need to go for all-out glory and grab victory after victory. I mean, in 9-race calendar, if you alternate between winning, DNF, winning, DNF, winning, DNF, winning, DNF, it's not going to matter at the end of this season. All that is going to matter is that you get the most amount of points and you deliver the most consistent drives out of anyone all throughout this field, which is why a driver like Adam Brockway is still probably my championship favorite. You know, he has 2 wins this season, but outside of that, he's been on the podium in just about every single race we've had thus far this season, running in P2, albeit we are in the midst of a pit cycle, so you can take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But even with that being said, he was in that battle for the final spot on the podium, and Brockway just putting in consistent drives like that, that's going to be what crowns a champion. If you go for all-out glory all the time and you alternate between winning and crashing, that's not going to matter. Just getting those consistent performances will, and Adam Brockway has done that in spades thus far this season.
Yeah, and with the point system as it is here in the PRL, if you finish in about 10th, you'll still pick up nearly pretty much 40 points in the race, if not just about 40 points. If you DNF, of course, you get 0. So finishing the race holds such weight in a series such as this, and drivers know that and really know that consistency has to be applied in this kind of championship where it is difficult to close down a championship lead. There is no real winner's bonus in terms of the point system, meaning that you have to consistently get those results at the sharp end of the field, meaning that if Aiden Young can finish in second place, in first or second place, all the way to the end of the season, he should win the championship, just because you physically cannot catch up the points. So that's definitely in the back of some of these drivers' minds when maybe going for some aggressive moves, and it'll definitely be in the back of the mind of Adam Brockway on the back of one of his teammates, it's fair to say, in the Muradness group. He will stay exactly where he is once again. Let's see if they come into the pit lane this time around. They're leaving it a little bit longer than their rivals, but it seems to be working for the time being.
It's still working out for them. I mean, they're running in P1 and P2, so no harm, no foul in that regard, but they will have to come into the pits and relinquish the lead yet again to Moben Khan. I gotta say, though, in terms of their encounters with GT4 traffic, probably a bad time to race, as they nearly came to blows with that car coming out of turn number 11, I should say, as they stay out yet again. Leroy and Brockway, I want to ask you about this, Dara, and how they've been able to shake out in terms of the lap traffic encounters that they've had in this extra few laps that they've decided to stay out compared to their competitors. Is it going to work out well for them? Are they avoiding those lap traffic encounters, actually building up that gap to some of the drivers that they're battling for position with? That is a real question, and that's another thing that really affects the strategy calls that these drivers do in races like this.
Yeah, strategy is always key in this series, and with 20 minutes to go, I think there's still a few strategy calls left on the table. Chris Schmareka trying to go around the outside of Roman Foe. He's got to be careful not to make a faux pas and it around, but he will keep it on the circuit. Just has to be careful now that we've got a couple of drivers in behind trying to make moves. Back up the inside, though. The number 10 will go better on through the corner, and Chris Mareka won't be thinking about Ken Copeland. He's thinking about the inside line, and he's thinking very much about P16 in the class as he takes that position. Roman Foe having to cope with P17, and Ken Copeland down in P18 looking for a move. Getting all tricky, though, down towards turn 5. Bit of a wide moment for Chris Schmareka, and through goes Roman Foe again. This is a real to and fro battle.
And Copeland getting a fantastic view of it as they head their way through the mid-sector, coming out of turn number 8 right now. The side-by-side fight may be continuing into turn number 9. That's some gutsy stuff. I don't have a good feeling about that at all. You got some LMP3 cars approaching them as well. The fact those two cars managed to go through turn number 9 side-by-side and didn't end up going off the track in a cloud of dust and steam will stun me. But look at a stunner from Ken Copeland trying to get the move done around the outside through turn number 10. Is it going to be successful? We got some more LMP3 traffic to contend with. Looks like Copeland unsuccessful in getting the 2-for-1 deal, but he will be able to get at least one move done. That being successful now finally clears him with the LMP3 traffic still involved in all that. But well done from Ken Copeland to get that move done on Chris Smecker heading through the final sector of this lap. That was very gutsy. It was very close, but it works out well for Copeland.
Yeah, and he won't be complaining too much, I'm sure. Will care, and as we see more moves happening, it's Victor Couto overtaking Zach Hebert into turn 1 on the 72 up into P4. Still 15 seconds off the lead in Mobin Khan, but at the moment, for the time being, with the pit stops from Leroy and Brockway pending, it's going to be the closest rival to Mobin Khan of drivers that have made the pit stop. So let's see what Couto can do in his 72. With a little bit more work left to do. Couto, of course, having a decent start to the season himself with that great result. Just some decent, consistent results so far this season. It's been nice to see him being able to keep it nearer the front end, and I think he may be looking for his best result of the season tonight, which will be fantastic news for him, maybe moving himself up the order by a couple of spots as well. Aiden Young's in the pit lane for the GT4s, and it's a bit of an exodus onto the pit lane with, what's that, 5, 6, 7 cars into the lane.
Yeah, look at that. The slow trickle, of course, coming into the pits that we've seen thus far in this race, certainly turning into some torrential rain as we've got Leroy and Brockway down in the pits. That's going to relinquish the lead to Mobin Khan, who's looking to seal the deal on his first checkered flag this season. I gotta say, what a drive it has been thus far for Mobin Khan. I'm going to refrain from further comment as going off the track in dramatic fashion, coming out of the final corner. Holy cow, that was a big hit into that inside barrier that, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, was Joe Ferroni in the number 38 car. He's now trying to get back up and rolling as side by side with some more lap traffic encounters continuing on. That was a major moment for the driver of the number 38 car. I'm about to take a look at a replay to see all of that. There it is. I think, yeah, he got a small little nudge heading through there, and it just sends him off auguring into the wall, and that is terrifying. Holy cow!
Yeah, that's not comfortable, is it? For Joe Faroni out of the final corner, just getting it off the racing line there to try and avoid any further collision with drivers coming through the final corner who may be slightly unsighted with his car sat firmly on that racing line, but managed to avoid big contact with 60 minutes left to go. Just not necessarily been his night so far. He's down in P27 in class, a couple of laps down the time being. Still battling going on though between Romain Foe and Ken Copeland for P15 and 16 now in the class. Actually, it's a little bit higher than that. Now it's P13 and 14 as they work their way down the hill through turn 6, the little kink of turn 6 and into turn 7 and 8. Ayrton Williams coming into the pit lane at the front of the GT4 class will mean that pretty much everybody will have made their pit stops. Jeremy Rogers is another driver we're waiting for as well, but on the whole, as a general rule of thumb, most drivers have made their way down pit lane with 15 minutes left of this race to go in the GT4 class, and we're seeing Aiden Young still leading the race. Look a little bit worried there with Copeland maybe looking for an inside line. He's not going to go for it there and will stay where he is, but clearly some desire from drivers to get back into the top 10.
Yeah, some of these racers with 15-ish minutes left on the clock, they're getting a little bit antsy. They've got some ants in their pants, so to speak. That is, I think, the first time that has ever been said on RaceSpot broadcast. I think, I'm not entirely sure. I may need to get that fact checked. If that was, what a way to bring it up. And I think it's a pretty accurate way to bring it up as well. These drivers are looking to get some moves done. You know, we are officially in the second half of this season now, and these racers are They're only feeling it at this point in time. Smrecker trying to get a move done into the corner. That is some gutsy stuff. Heading into turn number 1 and 2, not close enough to get that move done in that Mercedes. The side-by-side battling around this track. I don't know about you, Dara. Always gets me on the edge of my seat. Not only is the battling fantastic, it's also rather sketchy just to take a look at from our perspective in the commentary booth.
Yeah, it's never really a comfortable experience to watch some of these guys go racing because they're running right to the limit, to limits that I wouldn't dare go near myself, but they can. They've got such quality behind them and great backing from their teams as well, giving them that confidence to really be able to go after some of these moves in races like this, and again making sure that they can give the best case for themselves in a championship where, again, with only 9 rounds, you can't really afford too many weeks where you're off the ball. So keeping up that consistency, keeping up the confidence really, and the pace is a really crucial factor here in the PRL. Copeland dummying to the outside, going to the inside, not going to be able to make the move, but almost scaring was that Roman Foe down into turn 10 to try and defend the line, because that really was a bit of a late send. They've got to be careful there because Garrett Maines is right behind these guys, and we know how much pace he's shown tonight.
Yeah, Garrett Maines has shown a whole lot of pace. I mean, just throughout this season as well. Kicked the season off in style with a win at Watkins Glen. So let's see if he can continue on the pace here at Barcelona. But we got battles going on all throughout this field. And Young on track for a pretty good win if you can hold on in the final 13-ish minutes of this race. But we got some battles forming all throughout the field. Drivers still going side by side and proving that in a season as short as this one, Dara, any sort of positions can matter at the end of the day, which is part of the reason why we've had battles for the final spots inside the top 10, the final spots outside the top 10. Drivers battling for 15th, still going tooth and nail and trading blows like a bunch of boxers inside of the ring. And speaking of side-by-side racing with Garrett Maines and Kenneth Copeland heading off into turn number 4. And it looks like it's going to be Maines getting that move done for now.
Yeah, and Garrett Maines doing a very good job to try and get himself back to the top 10 after the struggles that he's had so far in this race. A couple of collisions has put him down the order from where he'd want to be. Of course, race winner so far this season in the opening round. Let's see if he can find a little bit more of that magic in the closing 12 minutes here at Barcelona. Our timing page reckons we've got another 8 laps to go at the end of this, with Mobin Khan leading the way. So opportunities are going to become much thinner and further between in the next couple of minutes. Is around the outside. This would be a bold move from Garrett Maines if he was to make it. Can he keep his foot in? Well, I'm not too sure if he'll have the overlap. He's going to have the inside line. Is he just about into turn 11 and 12? He's going to get that one done. Great move from Garrett Maines, and it means that there's more drivers trying to follow him through. Ken Copeland looking for the move. Got to be careful though. Nearly spinning the car.
Oh! Holy cow. Oh, big contact, big crash heading through. Multiple cars getting taken out. That's an LMP3 car getting involved in that drama too. GT4s battling tooth and nail. I just did not have a good feeling about it. I was thinking that Ken Copeland got off lucky with that sideways snap heading through turn number 12. And it wasn't going to last very long, and that's exactly what I was expecting. Dara, close quarters battling, it's going to end in tears.
Yeah, we may have to see that one again, really. Kurt Ham worked his way through as well. He'll be pleased the C opened up as if the red. This is what Ken Copeland saw. Great to have the aerial shot, really, to really judge what happened. A little bit of contact side by side. Ooh, I think that Roman Focus lost the rear end there. Maybe it was a bit of Neko. There didn't look like there was too much damage. Maybe just getting wide off the circuit, lost in the rear end. But that's difficult to say because I thought there was more contact initially than there ended up being on the replay. Oh my word, as a couple of drivers sneak their way down the inside at the final corner. But in the end, it's a little bit lighter. Oh no, there was contact. It didn't look like there was contact from the aerial. Maybe a little bit of the old net code there.
and maybe some net code. Let's take a look. That looked like it was absolutely contact. I gotta say though, in all of that, I'm curious if we could take a look at the shot, the massive impact for the LMP3. Oh God, that was a big hit into the inside tire barrier. They were stopped in the racing line through that final corner as well. So the fact that no one else joined in that already massive 3-car crash over Pineda was that LMP3 car. And look at that. That was a tank slapper of a hit. And looks like he's not going to get hit yet again in that number 991 car. But either way, a massive impact for all three of those drivers. And that's going to take them out of contention. Those cars are ready for the scrap heap. But with that close quarter stuff, it's going to have stuff like that happen from time to time. But still stings nevertheless.
It's a crash that would take a couple of drivers down to the medical centre if this was the real world. Luckily, though, everybody can just close the sim down, get up, maybe go make yourself a warm drink to console yourself. Maybe a hot chocolate, get some marshmallows in there. Always makes the soul feel a little bit better on a Monday evening. But drivers, I'm sure, will be annoyed if their days are coming to a premature end, especially in the final 10 minutes, working so hard for such a long time in this race. For some of them to come up with absolutely nothing is going to be infuriating. For Jerome Bertiome, though, still looking to get inside the top 10, would be his second LMP3 top 10 of all time, and he wouldn't mind a result like that. Was running right at the front not too long ago in this race, but even so, I think he'd definitely take a decent result like this for his championship aspirations as a GT4 going off the road. That won't concern Bertiome. A couple of these drivers really having good evenings in terms of top 5s, top 10s that they weren't necessarily expecting, which is always a positive to see.
Yeah, always a good thing to see as well. And, despite the fact we haven't seen a battle for the lead in the LMP3 category, I want to talk about the two drivers running P1 and P2 because they have been, at least in my view, the P1 and P2 drivers from this season. I mentioned earlier, talking in reference to Adam Brockway in the number 42 car, how just being a consistent force all throughout the season will help you out a heck of a lot in terms of that championship battle. But both of those drivers have been able to do that in spades thus far this season. Adam Brockway already has 2 wins on the board unless there's some sort of major drama involving Mobin Khan. Probably not going to be a 3rd here today, but it's going to be a 4th podium from this season. And for Brockway, that's a kind of result that he wants to have in mind. Just looking through the results that he's posted on the board thus far this season, kicked the season off with a win at Watkins Glen, then finished 3rd at the 2nd race at Daytona, and then won last time out at Mugello. Mobin Khan, on the other hand, I've kind of talked about this in some of the interviews I've done with him, but he's been working up to this win. Kicked it off with a P3 at Daytona from the pole, and then ended up 2nd at the 2nd race of the season at Daytona. Did I just say Daytona was the season opener? It was Watkins Glen, where he kicked the season off with a P3 finish, and then he finished P2 yet again at Mugello for the 3rd race of the championship. So those two kind of one and the same in regards to the fact that they have been militarily consistent all throughout this still very early on season. So Mobin Khan and Adam Brockway finishing P1 and P2 feels a little bit fitting, Dara.
Does, and I think for Mobin, he'll be very pleased if he's able to get this one finished and in the lead, mind you, gain those extra couple of points in the championship on his rival. Would be Mobin Khan's again 2nd race win. He's moved into P4 or tied P4 in the all-time pole list in the LMP3s, and will move into sole 6th place if he's able to keep himself inside the top 10. So really is a fantastic driver in these LMP3s. But we've only got 6 minutes left here, Ron, which means I've got time to throw out my fun fact of the evening to you. With the race starts that we're seeing tonight, we now have all 4 GT4 or the 4 most experienced PRL GT4 drivers on the grid with us tonight. But 2 of them are in the LMP3s, 2 of them being Jerome Bertiome and Adam Brockway, who have the 2nd and 3rd most starts in the GT4s. They're in the LMP3s. Justin Rame and Aidan Young, who were 1st and 4th in terms of starts, find themselves in the GT4s. Whoa! Oh my word, that's a massive crash. That is an absolutely massive crash. And quite frankly, I think it's not controversial to say that the number 82 there has been absolutely eliminated through no fault of their own. And that is absolutely gutting for Jeff Rosenberger there as he made his way down in towards turn 1. Huge contact.
How How is he still going? It doesn't even look like there's a paint chip on that number 82 car. How? How in the world? Okay, let's take a look at this. And it was a misjudged move from the LMP3. I think there's no other way to describe it. That LMP3 car clipping the 82 of Rosenberg and pow into that wall, spinning around. How many times did that car spin in the span of just a couple of seconds? Looked like probably about 6.5 pirouettes. It's not figure skate competition, mind you. It is an iRacing event, so that is not going to award him any style points. But that was a small little tap from the LMP3s. And talking about that lap traffic dilemma, it shows you that a small little moment, a small little mistake can have massive consequences. But how that car is still running stuns me, Dara.
Yeah, crazy, really. I mean, seeing it again, you could just about see that Rosenberg was maybe closing the potential gap for the LMP3 to go through, but at the same time, Rosenberg will say there is something called the brake that he could use, the LMP3 could use to try and avoid that collision. Either way, somehow, everybody still going in the final 5 minutes of this race. Final 4 minutes, mind you, with only a few laps left to run. Will be 3 laps to run, I do believe, with Mobin Khan having enough time to get around to complete 2 more full laps before we see Barney and the white flag being waved from the gantry. Zach Hebert wouldn't mind getting himself wouldn't mind getting himself onto the podium in the final couple of minutes. He was, so consistent last season to get himself in the end right up towards the front in the championship. It was P4 for him with 5 top 5s, no wins, mind you, but just that consistency keeping him there or thereabouts in the championship. Hasn't quite had that so far this season, but a podium would really kick off a great little run of races, which could see him back in towards contention.
And let's see how things shake out in the closing stages of this 60-minute long race. Less than 3 minutes to go, and I'm doing the math in my head. I guess that would probably lead to us having about 2 to go this time by, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, for the overall leader of Mobin Khan. It's definitely been a race here at Barcelona. Lots of these drivers battling hard and seeing those difficulties that we have mentioned a lot throughout this race, talking about the old school nature of this track, the lap traffic encounters, the strategy playing a big role in this race as well. And it's been an old school story of dominance in both of our classes, with Mobin Khan and Aim Young on track for some pretty commanding victories. I will say though, Khan and that gap dropping now down to about 8.5 seconds between himself and Brockway. Hoping to God I didn't just pull off one of the saddest commentator jinxes of my entire broadcasting career there.
Yeah, I think you just about managed to get away with it. A couple of minutes left to go in this race, meaning that time is very much of the essence. If you started brushing your teeth now, you'd be able to finish with the timer at 0. So really not that long left for drivers to make moves, and with overtaking opportunities few and far between at this circuit anyway, I think there's going to be some desperate lunges in the next couple of minutes. Ayrton Williams has done an absolutely stellar job in that 25 car to find himself inside the top 5 and even nearly inside the top 4 behind Christian in the 55. Of course, those 2 teammates. It'll be interesting to see if any move can be made in the final couple of seconds. Grenon going wide, Grenon off the road, and somehow Grenon being able to stick it around the outside regardless and stay exactly where he is in the top 5 with everyone off road, just trying to find a way through and behind him.
How in the world? How did he keep that car going in a straight line? That will stun me throughout the rest of the season. Because I was thinking, okay, yep, he's going off into the grass. That car is going to be a write-off. But no, he kept it going in a straight line. I have no idea how. If we got a chance to ask Maxime Grenon about that, I don't even think he would know how that car got kept out of the barrier. But still, that 27 car proving that these drivers are on a racetrack like this, as hard as it is to overtake, I'll be going for some moves where there really isn't any room to go for a move. But side-by-side racing, though, for the final spot on the podium, and LMP3 in a big crash heading into the corner. That's going to allow, and more contact being made as he tries to rejoin Zach Hebert. Going to take out a GT4 McLaren and all of that. Eric Leroy going to win out in that battle, but another ugly collision heading down into turn number 1 and 2 at the very end of this race.
really for Hebert after all of that work. For it all to come undone in the final minute or so, in a horrible place to get stuck as well, right in the middle of the road. White flag is flying though here at Barcelona as we see the replay, and that's not the smartest of rejoins, is it? If we're being honest with ourselves, and I think the 38 will be feeling slightly aggrieved. The driver who won't be feeling aggrieved though is Mobin Khan. He hasn't looked back from the start. That gap was extended in the early stages, and he's been able to just keep that advantage all the way to this point in the race. He knows that he can sit behind this battle with David Stevenson going side by side, more than a lap down. This is a driver's a couple of laps down, working their way through. Stevenson will be finishing the race now as Mobin Khan comes around the final couple of corners. 6 poles in 13 races. He's only managed to convert 1. Make that 2 for Mobin Khan. He's right in the title fight, and the 64 for Satellite Racing is your winner here at Barcelona tonight. What a win it was. Never really looked in doubt. In the GT4 class, it's going to be a pretty close battle towards the P5, P6 region. It's not close at the front though. Aiden Young, win number 22 of his GT4 PRL career, and by pretty much 22 seconds in the end.
And very fitting, the numbers certainly matching there, the stars aligning for Aiden Young. Meanwhile, a side-by-side fight may developing here right to the line for the final spot on the GT4 podium. Who's going to win out in all of that? I believe it is going to be the 55 car of Christian Menendez, holding off the challenge from Aaron Myers right to the line, but it was less than a tenth of a second between those two cars when everything is said and done. I say less than a tenth of a second. It was literally just over 1/10 of a second. 0.101, but still practically nothing at the end of a 1 hour long race. A side-by-side fights continuing on still in that GT4 class. Here's a battle of 2 McLarens heading their way side-by-side through the final corner, and it's going to be winning it out in all of that. So that's not going to be a side-by-side fight that I maybe thought we were going to get, but still some great racing here at Barcelona, and some very deserving winners when everything is said and done as well.
Yeah, great evening's worth of racing, and really deserving to see Mobin Khan and Aiden Young to the top steps of the podium. It's great to see them work their way through in dramatic fashion here at Barcelona tonight. Couple of big moments, but in the end, nothing was going to stop Mobin Khan from winning tonight's race, and he led from pretty much start to finish. Well, he led in the net race lead from start to finish, that is. Adam Brockway was P2, championship leader coming into this race. Will still be in the championship lead going into next week, but with a slightly reduced margin. Eric Leroy, though, more consistent results for him, and he will stay up in the top 3. Evan off, Maxime Grenon, 4th and 5th in a consistent night for those two, with Victor Couto and Jerome Bertillon getting themselves inside the top 7. Barely anything to split Zach Hebert and Carter James across the line, all of 500ths of a second for the teammates, with Kwok Nguyen rounding out our top 10 for the Ignite team. Faizan Sheikh just missed out on our top 10 with Dakiel Rodriguez in 12th. Those guys were everybody on the lead lap. Steve Bammer and Chad Nobles were 1 lap down. David Stevenson was 2 laps down. Pineda 5, Isaac Gardner 7, and Chris Massey 12 laps down in the end. I'll be surprised if he is not listed as a DNF. In the GT4s, it was Aiden Young who won out after just under 37 laps. Arnaud Jeunesse ran him as close as he could, but 21.4 seconds was the winning margin in the end. 3 different cars inside the top 3, with Christian in the 55, in the Aston Martin in 3rd. Aaron Myers recovered to 4th after his woes early on, with Ayrton Williams just about behind him in 5th. Matthew Wyckoff and Kate Smith 6th and 7th, not much to split those two either, with Eric Fenson, Michael Brooks and Jeremy Rogers rounding out the top 10. Andrew Slowback and Chris Schrecker were inside the top 12, and they were within a minute of the race lead, with Garrett Maines, Kurt Ham and Jeremy Manella rounding out the top 15. The quintuple of McLarens was rounded out by Gabriel Gutierrez in 16th. They had Ken Copeland, Mike Gallant and Roy Brown, who all finished on the lead lap. Parky Muirhead was 1 lap down in his Aston Martin, and he was joined in that by Stephen Tang and Travis Pruitt. Jeff Rosenberger and Joseph Maley were 2 laps down, with Kalen Tobin, Joe Farroni and Keith Powell 6 laps down. Roman Foe, Robert Schwenkler and Justin Rame 7, 11 and 26 laps down respectively. Justin Rame, it's going to be a long way out of title contention, at least until we are able to apply some dropped rounds. But after that race, I'm delighted to say we're going to be able to speak to our race winner, Mobin Khan in the 64. Mobin, welcome in. Race win number 2 in the last season and a half. Must be delighted to convert the pole.
Yeah, very happy with that. That was very nice. Had a comfortable lead there and comfortable gap in quali despite a couple of mistakes in the Q lap. I was worried for a bit, but we had a decent margin, and we were able to just run our own race really, and didn't even need to fuel save that much. Looking at the gaps, like at one point we had a decent margin. I could kind of pit whenever I wanted to, so that was a smooth race. I enjoyed that a lot.
I mean, how comfortable were you feeling in the car? It seemed like you had a good enough lead that you could almost manage the traffic a little bit more than the rest, but were you kind of feeling that in the car, or was it really 100% from the word go?
Yeah, no, the first 10 laps, it was like I needed to see where other guys were at, so it was like kind of pushing at the start. But once I saw like lap after lap the gap was increasing, I was like, I understood that I didn't need to go too hard because the tires really take a beating here, and I actually they fell off a cliff on the second last lap, and I spun into one. Like they had nothing in the left front and left rear, so I just made it on grip there, but it was really good, and I felt comfortable. Didn't really feel any pressure throughout the race, so that's always nice to be able to run a race like that.
Absolutely, and to have your second win of the last season and a half, it must feel good as well. Looking forward, though, into next week, very different surroundings. Phillip Island, not a circuit we go to very often, particularly in these machines. Are you looking forward to that challenge?
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a very close fight. I think the pack's gonna stay very close. It'll get dicey in traffic. It's a classic. I think it's in Australia, so it's a classic Australian track. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be on edge, a lot of entertainment. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, so are we. But congratulations, Mobin. Race win here this evening, and very much firmly in championship contention. We'll hopefully be able to speak to you next week.
But yeah, thank you. I'd just like to give a shout out to Satellite Racing for supporting me through this LMP3 GT4 challenge. Adam Crane, Christian Menezes, and Ayrton Williams, I'd like to congratulate them on a top 5 result there, and Christian sneaking onto the podium. That was great. I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Dabber, Ellis Engineering, Moradnis, Nemesis Lab, and I'd like to give you guys a thank you for putting on an awesome broadcast with the PRL, giving us a platform to perform on. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, appreciate you as well, Mobin, for taking time out of your day to race here. And again, great result for you. Hopefully speak to you in 7 days' time.
Cheers. Looking forward to it.
Mobin Khan there with us after his race win here at the circuit of Barcelona, Catalonia. Great result for him in the end. He was followed relatively closely behind by championship leader Adam Brockway, who's able to join us now. And Ron, he's with you now.
Yep, Adam Brockway now joining us in the commentary booth. Now, Adam, looked like a pretty hard-fought day of racing action here at Barcelona. Talk us through it.
Today was definitely a tough race. A lot of these guys had a lot of pace. You know, Mobin was pretty much in a class of his own. I spent this weekend at Daytona with, some of the guys from the M squad, so wasn't able to get much practice in this weekend, so the goal was a top 5 and just keep the car clean, not get involved in, any incidents. So, P2 tonight is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, nothing to scoff at all. Continuing on that streak of having 4 podium finishes in 4 races thus far this season. But Adam Brockway, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and excited to see you back out on the track for the rest of the season, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Brockway then. Oh, I nearly dragged myself out of the booth there. That wouldn't have been a good idea. Great to speak to Adam again after a great result for him. Eric Leroy as well, joining us after his P3. Eric, welcome in. Congratulations on another podium. Really feels like you got some good pace going this season. Do you think you're able to keep this momentum up as you've built it up over the start of the year?
Hey, thank you. That's the goal. I have to first apologize to Zach Hebert, I believe it's pronounced, on the last lap there. He had a run into me, and he was most likely going to get the better of me, and I was just trying to battle him clean, and one of my rears locked up, and I hit him and basically took him out. I'm not sure where he ended up, but really sorry to him. Big shout out to my team, Moradnis. All the guys there have been helping me out so much, finding pace in this car, and working on strategy and traffic management, which I still need a lot of help. But yeah, the goal is to keep this going.
We hope you can. It's been great to see so far this season, Eric. But good luck in 7 days' time at Phillip Island, and we may be able to speak to you again then.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Roy then P3 driver in the LMP3 battle. That rounds out our LMP3 drivers. In the GT4s though, God, it's rinse and repeat once again. 22nd race win for Aiden Young, and Ron, he's with you now.
Yep, Aiden Young now joining us in the commentary booth. Aiden, it's your third victory in a row, coming at another completely different racetrack than the one before. So talk us through the drive here at Barcelona.
Well, you know, from the drop of the green flag, I just looked forward and told myself, well, I need to look forward because that's where I want to go. So as soon as I saw the green lights come on, I was like, come on, let's go. Let's get it. I'm ready to race. And just put my foot to the floor and then just focused ahead. Luckily saw the incident already happening with the LMP3s before it even happened. So I kind of expected that I would have to kind of check up at the second part of T1 and 2. And I see Justin behind me pushing me into the corner to get me past Arnaud, and then when I look back, I have a 2-second gap. So I didn't really see what happened there, but I mean, avoiding the one LMP3 that was spun there, that was definitely a little bit of a code brown. I thought I was gonna nail him and bam, race over lap 1. So that wasn't necessarily ideal there, but after that I just focused forward, tried to keep a steady pace, stay smooth, and then push as hard as I could, while also trying to save fuel so I could get that lucid extra lap and get a shorter pit stop than everybody else, and it worked out.
Well, that it certainly did, grabbing your third win of the season. I gotta say, truer words have never been spoken at the quote at the start of the interview. And always remember this, Aiden, if you haven't gotten to where you're going, you aren't there yet. Thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and excited to see you back out on the track for the rest of the season.
Hey, man. See you next week.
Yeah, I'm sure we will see Aiden Young next week. With the pace that he is showing, he could still get himself into the top 10 list of all-time PRL race winners by the end of the season. And I'm sure that is going to be his aim. P2 in the end, though, went to Arnaud Jeunesse. Another good result for the 3-1-2. Welcome in, Arnaud. After another good result for you, that is going to be your 53rd top 5 in the PRL and your 96th top 10. You've been so consistent across so many different forms in this league. Tell us how it went for you tonight.
I was a little bit surprised to get the pole position tonight. I know the Porsche was strong here, and Spain is one of my favorite racetracks. So yeah, I knew I had pace, but I did some officials racing this week, and it was great. So. But I lack a little bit of experience, I would say, in race starts, and it showed tonight. I mean, Aiden had me on the start, so I had no real chance of battling. Kind of bunched up together to T1, and yeah, from there, I mean, I was in a sandwich between Garrett and and Justin, and sadly, Justin got the worst of it. And after that, I mean, I got a little bit lucky with Garrett. Afterwards, got taken out by an LMP3, and then it was a lone race after this. So, congrats to Aiden. He was putting a masterclass tonight, and yeah, it was great fun. Looking for a next race. I'm not good on the rain. But when it's dry, then I kind of find comfort in the Porsche.
But another great result for you, and definitely going to keep yourself in title contention, even if Aiden was able to win the race once again tonight. But Arnaud, well done, congratulations, and hopefully in 7 days' time at Phillip Island, we'll get to speak to you again.
Sure, thank you guys. Have a nice night.
You too, Arnaud. Great to be able to speak to our P2 man. And there's only one more driver left to go, Ron. It's our P3 driver. And Christian in the 55 is with you now.
Yeah, Christian Menezes now joining us in the commentary booth off the back of his first podium of the season. Now, Christian, welcome into the commentary booth and talk us through the race here at Barcelona.
Thank you very much. Nice to finally meet you guys. The race honestly was very nice. Me and Ayrton were able to work together for most of it, my teammate. On the start, our row had an incredible start. I was alongside Pole going into turn 1, so honestly, best case scenario. And then the incident on the start kind of worked in my favor. Didn't get any damage from it and was able to get up to 4th on the start, so I was really happy with that. And just throughout the race, tire saving, fuel saving, and I was able to get with Ayrton, and we were just snaking through the whole race. Towards the end of the race, Aaron was catching us and ended up getting by Ayrton, but it was a really good battle. Had a lot of fun battling them, and nice to finally be on the podium. And thank you again to everybody part of Satellite, Adam Crane, Ayrton Williams, Logan Khan, Alex Ellis, all of them.
Awesome, man. Well, got the shout-outs out there like a true professional. Christian, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Christian there, he's already into our good books, Ron. He said that he was pleased to meet us. That first time that's happened this season. Long may it continue. Well done to Christian after a great result tonight. Phillip Island's where we're going to be in 7 days' time. That's a very different circuit to what we found tonight here, isn't it, Ron?
Oh, it is just about as far away from Barcelona as you can get, both geographically and otherwise. Phillip Island, it's fast, it's challenging, it's twisty. You got a whole bunch of grass on either side of the very thin strip of asphalt that they call a racetrack down there down under. But Phillip Island, another fantastic track, and that will be the halfway mark of this PRL season, a season which has had everything thus far. Strategic racing, some fantastic battling, and I'm sure Phillip Island in 1 week's time is going to be absolutely no different.
Yeah, cannot wait for that one in 7 days' time. Same place here on RaceSpotTV. Of course, don't forget tomorrow night with PRL action. Wednesday night, Thursday night, and on Sunday night as well. But in 7 days' time, myself, Terra Attacker, Ron Moore's alongside me, and Hugo Luis, who's been up in the broadcast booth, will be with you to see who will go racing and who will win the race in Phillip Island down under. Join us then. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.